Brad over here, just a few days away from a chance to get back in the UFC. If I told you when you parted ways with the company 3 years ago that you would have to go through all this, go through the show again, everything you're going through now to get back to the spot, would you have believed me?
Yeah, I probably would have believed you. I knew it was going to be a hard road. I didn't necessarily. I hoped it wouldn't be this difficult, but here we are. Maybe everyone just thinks their journey is going to be the hardest because that's all they know. But mine feels like it was pretty hard, and it's hardened me. So I'm excited to show it on Saturday.
Did you enjoy the experience more or less this time around after going through it and already kind of knowing what it was like?
Oh, it was so much worse. So much worse. The first time I did it, I said, that was cool, but I hope I never have to do it again. That was kind of that in one sentence. There you go. After doing it a second time, I certainly don't want to have to do it again. It was difficult. Like, you had it at bantamweight instead of featherweight. The notice I had was maybe 9 days. So it was a grind, but we got there, and look what I did with no preparation.
You obviously there were a lot of familiar faces on the opposing team before you switched over. As you're probably well aware, not a lot of great things said about you this season. Was this stressful because of that? What was it like watching it back and how you felt like you were portrayed overall?
In the moment, it was stressful, let's say, in the house. When you're talking with when you're relying on your coaches to do everything for you. If you want to use the Performance Institute, ask the producers. They say, talk to your coaches. You want anything, it's talk to your coaches. You want, Normatec compression boots, see the UFC PI people, let's talk to your coaches. And then when you're getting resistance there, that was difficult. But watching it back, I don't think they portrayed me poorly. I think there's a lot more they could have shown. But I feel at least it's been mixed, and maybe it's created some controversy or something of interest in the show because I felt like they were airing more on the side of kind of pure sport. Here's the training session, here's the fight. That's about it. Felt my episodes were pretty good, though, so I was happy about that.
You get Cody Gibson, who's looked pretty good on the show. Cody called you, when he was in here earlier, the most boring tape study he's ever had before a fight. And even Michael Chandler said on Twitter, mark my words, Cody gets a finish this weekend. So your response to that and the matchup with Cody?
So Chandler still doesn't like me? Okay. I don't know why he has a little vendetta against me. Maybe it's because I switched teams and maybe because I've been successful or put up resistance. Again, I've heard him say if he was in my shoes, he'd be doing the exact same thing. So that's kind of funny. Not unexpected. The most boring tape study he's ever had. Did he watch the Timmer fight?
He did give you props for that fight, but he said other than that, not fun.
I felt like my last Brave fight was good. My fights in the UFC were good. Do I care about Cody's opinion? Really? No, not at all.
Two last things first. Will this contract feel sweeter than the first one?
Absolutely. The first one felt good. I'm not going to lie. It felt good going from regional show money to UFC money. It felt really good, and it was finally being there. But then having to go take a massive pay cut, be on the grind, not to make it about money, but at the end of the day, as a upcoming fighter trying to get back to the UFC, it's definitely a concern. And now being in my 30s, it's definitely on your mind. You have, you want to set your family up and you want to support the people around you. So this contract will be very sweet.
And then last thing, you want to become obviously the TUF bantamweight champion, but at the end of the night, we're going to get a UFC bantamweight championship belt wrapped around somebody's waist. Do you think it's going to go around the waist of Aljamain Sterling or Sean O'Malley?
If I had to put money on it, I'd go Aljo, but Sean looked very impressive against Peter Yan, so I wouldn't be surprised if I just wouldn't be surprised at any result because we don't really know how good Sean O'Malley is. But if I was a betting man, Aljo's his consistency at the top has been incredible.
Brad, just one from me. Are you a diva?
Oh, you see, I said it in jest, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think I'm a diva, but I'm going to say what I want and try to push for it. At the same time, I think I'm fairly giving person, so if anybody ever needs anything, I'm willing to give it to them. And if I was necessarily if we switch roles, you better be putting in the work, and I put in the work, so I feel like when I ask for something, it's justified.
Do you feel like your dynamic in the house was always going to be a bit weird, because obviously you came from SBG and you ended up straight away on Team Chandler, so you were not set up to fail in a sense. You're obviously very successful, but in terms of the dynamics in the house, you were set up in a weird, uncomfortable position from the get-go.
Absolutely. You know, being in the van and everyone's kind of shitting on Connor, trying to attack his character, which you're sitting there being like, well, all this is kind of, you don't know the guy. Like, you're just judging him from what you see and what, I don't know. It was certainly weird. Especially, you know, Chandler brought me aside pretty well first. Well, the first thing he said to us when he chose us is, the thing I like about you veterans is you know exactly what you need. So then when I ask and not for what I need, you know, and then there's resistance, it made it a little weird, as well as, you know, maybe the second practice, him saying, you know, John Kavanagh, my coach, was talking about a trade maybe, and he's like, no, I want you on this team. So, you know, with all of that, it certainly made it a little awkward for sure.
Who wins that fight, Connor or Chandler?
I think it's the Eddie Alvarez fight all over again.
Brad, over to your right here. You've all the tough stuff aside. You've been in the UFC before, and ultimately, you know, you parted ways with the promotion. So now that you're coming back, that aspect of it, what did you learn that you feel like you need to do differently this time around? Like, is it to get more finishes? Is it, you know, I don't know. What do you think?
You know, I feel like we can keep on talking about finishes, but when you're fighting the competition I'm fighting, it's a different story. I don't know the record of my opponents. That's necessarily when I departed the UFC, but it's a whole lot easier finishing, you know, these padded records, if you will. I think the combined record was something like 37-5 or something of my 4 opponents in Brave. Yeah, it's a whole lot easier getting finishes against nobodies. You know, guys who are set up for you. Same thing in the house. You give me Carlos Vera, who I think it was the best prospect on the bantamweight side, and then you give me Timur. Well, wouldn't it be nice for my opponent to slip in the first round after getting outstriking you and securing a choke? That'd be fantastic. But Timur's not going to do that. Carlos isn't going to do that. I think Carlos suffered a defeat a long time ago. He was, I'd say, a very dangerous and, you know, awkward opponent to fight and very difficult to get a finish on. So you look at the guys I'm fighting, not to be defensive here, but I'm going, well, of course I'd like to wrap my shit around, you know, 0-7's, you know, ahead, or fight a 50-50 record. But everyone I fought has had 1 or 2 losses maybe. I'm going for the finish, but ultimately my opponents decide how they lose, so that's it.
You look at the 4 fights you had outside the UFC, in Brave, as you mentioned. You fought 8-0, 9-4, 11-2, 7-1. So guys all that have very good records. How do you feel like the Brad that's sitting up here now compared to the Brad that we saw fight in the UFC the last time? Like, what is the difference between you two?
We're completely different fighters. One, I got a little chip on my shoulder, but I just feel when we were in the UFC, we were on the right path, and we've kind of kept to that formula. Didn't keep it the same. Obviously, we've changed things, and that's how I always want to go. Every fight camp should be different. We've added in a lot of support systems, and really, I've matured with my team, SBG. When I got into the UFC in 2018, I had been with them. I had been with SBG for a matter of months, and then pretty well a year until I was owed the UFC. So I was only with the SBG for, let's say, 18 months total. So over that time, I've been working with John. We've been evolving our systems of training, if you will, brought on great striking coach in Dave Roach. And that's where I think we're starting to see that. You saw in the Timur fight the evolution of what Brad Katona can do. I'm a complete fighter. And, you know, Dave's been bringing out that mean side of my game.
it's been asked a few times, different things about the drama that happened in the house. But the last episode, they kind of highlighted the conversation that you had with Cody, and I felt like I couldn't tell if it was just the production setting up, kind of a rivalry between you two for the finale, or if he was kind of the guy that maybe gave you the most amount of pushback. So do you feel like he was kind of your, I don't want to say enemy in the house, but was he one of the guys that you butted heads with the most?
I don't think I butted heads with anybody besides him. He keeps on saying, nobody liked you. Well, I just saw Austin, and, I just saw Austin in the lobby and said hi to him. He seemed pretty friendly. I saw Kurt, seemed pretty friendly. So you're saying that nobody likes me. Okay, that hurts a little bit. But, yeah, it seemed like we kept on butting heads. And the funny part about that was it was about an hour before leaving to the venue for the semifinals. He was trying to get me off my game. He doesn't want to fight me. He wanted to do anything to have Timur win. He wanted to throw me off because he feels like he can maybe hurt Timur on the feet because he's been hurt. I think that's the only way he would ever win a fight with Timur. So, it's those little games, and it all stems from fear. Yet, here I am.
And it seems like you're kind of enjoying this. Like, you're not necessarily aggravated by this portrayal, but do you like kind of being in a rivalry sort of feeling?
It certainly doesn't hurt. I'm never lacking for motivation, and I can see right through it. It's fear. All of that, saying, I'm boring, I'm this. He's scared of the grappling. I think after the Timur fight, he's scared of the striking. It all stems in fear. Why would he be doing this if it wasn't out of fear? Why would he be trying to throw me off? Because he didn't like me? Like, we lived in a house for 4 weeks together, and we didn't really argue. Maybe I ordered too many groceries for his liking, and that's what he didn't like, Again, every little thing I did seemed to annoy him, and why would it? Because I was prepared, I was ready, and I was successful.
Brad, over here. Obviously, you're in a tough situation, being that your head coach was coaching against you. I know he stepped aside, but Conor is your teammate and your friend. He still coached against you, and he was pretty loud.
Yes.
Do you think he should have, for that fight, stepped aside or something?
It was surprising how vocal he was, and even in the middle of a fight, you're like, really? Okay, let's go. And so, as Michael Jordan said, I took that personally and, used it. I used it, and really what's Conor's job there is to get his guys to be successful, and he did everything he could to do that. He brought in a great team of coaches, nutritionists, massage therapists, anything you needed, a chef, whatever his team needed, he provided. And I guess in his role there, I believe he said it in one of the first episodes, it's up to these guys, they have to go do it. So should he not? But then who does Carlos have then? So it makes sense. I don't think I'd do something different if I was in his shoes. Maybe I'd be a little bit less emotional about it, but from what I know of Conor, he's 100% in or 100% out.
And obviously one of the storylines of this fight is, in the history of the UFC, nobody has ever won the Ultimate Fighter twice. You would. What does that mean to you?
It'll be something I can hang my hat on when I'm done, and it would be cool. I've been making jokes that I'd be the multimate fighter. I kind of like that. It puts a smile on my face, but I've been living my life like I'm going to be fighting for that bantamweight championship one day. So I'm excited to be on that card, be seeing these guys, because that's the standard I've been trying to keep up. It isn't just to win TUF. This isn't the end goal. This is the start of this journey into the UFC.
Brad, over here to your right. Just one from me. Just because Merab was in here a couple minutes ago with Aljamain, any interest in that rematch, working towards that in your next UFC tenure?
Absolutely. Merab's been nothing but very friendly. I saw him in the UFC PI during the show, and Fight Week. He's been nothing but friendly. But absolutely, I felt the level that night, and I still believe, we fight that fight 10 times. I might have won it 9 times out of the 10, and he did some really good things. And now that's easy for me to say. He's worked himself up to like a #1 contender spot. He's done amazing since then, and I think it comes down to his work ethic, and I feel like I have a similar work ethic. And just because my road was a little bit different, I felt everything was cut short, otherwise I'd be right up there beside him, and we probably would have had that rematch. But certainly it's something I want to get back, especially because of how successful he's been.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.